I'm really pleased to be here with teachers and parents from John Rowan School. I think it's vital, the campaign that you're involved in, and I'm bringing solidarity greetings to you. Like Siobhan said, I was until last September, I was General Secretary of the National Union of Teachers. We amalgamated the National Union of Teachers and the Association of Teachers and Lecturers from the 1st of September, so now I'm Joint General Secretary of the National Education Union, along with my co-Joint General Secretary, Mary Bousted. She sends you her greetings as well. We represent a majority of teachers in England and Wales. We have thousands of school leaders in membership of the National Education Union and many support staff as well, as it turns out. I want to say something about academies in general first, but I know that Howard is going to talk about academies in general, so I won't say a great deal. And then I want to talk about the John Rowan School, about the Ofsted inspection, and what I think the best way forward for the John Rowan School is. But I think it's hard to do that without saying something about academies in general. And what I want to say in general is that academisation is a form of privatisation. It is about reducing the public voices in how we organise education and instead increasing the private voices in the way we organise education. So the first thing that happens when a school academises is you lose local authority governors, local councillors don't have the influence. In many schools which are part of multi-academy trusts, parent governors are removed from governing bodies. In some schools in multi-academy trusts, no local governing body whatsoever. Often the number of staff governors reduced. So public voices reduced and private voices instead increased. The Academy Trust Chief Executive, usually appointed by a small coterie of people, quite often their friends, and they become the Academy Trust Chief Executive. And not only does their private voice become louder, they have private motives. I'm not into conspiracy theories, but if as an Academy Trust Chief Executive you are paying yourself more than the Prime Minister, or more than £200,000 a year, then you do have a private motive in the system. If you are like the head of the Wakefield City Academy Trust, he was chief executive of, I think, about 20 schools, was paying himself a huge salary, paying himself overtime when he went over any sort of number of hours, paying his daughter to be the committee clerk, paying his own IT company to provide the IT services to those schools. Those are private motives. And those private motives can distort the way a school behaves as well. It seems to me that within a school, there are roughly two ways to improve a school. I think there are things you can do outside. You can improve unemployment, you can reduce unemployment, you can reduce inequality, you can organise Sure Start, you can do all sorts of things outside a school. But within a school, there are two broad ways to improve things. To improve the teaching and learning, which can be complicated and time-consuming, but works, or to change the children. And that's what we're seeing happening in all too many multi-academy trusts. The huge amount of off-rolling that happens in the Harris Academy schools has been written down and talked about by others. The Oxford Centre for Studying High Performance looked at academy schools, sponsored schools, like John Rowan would become, and said we found 10 things they found that those schools did to improve themselves. The first thing was get rid of the head teacher, so head teachers beware. The second thing was change the school's advertising strategy. That's about a way of changing the kids that are at the school, and it is not an educational policy. And the fourth thing they had on their list, and this is not me, this is not a union body in any sense, and these are not my words either, remove the poor quality students. That's what they said schools were doing to improve their results, or I should say, to improve the appearance of their results. Remove the poor quality students. Only have students in your school who are going to do well anyway, and then claim that their success is your success, and therefore you deserve to be paid as much as the Prime Minister. This is a eating away at the public conscience of education. People who come into education, they don't come in for the money by and large. I'm not saying it's a bad salary compared with many people, but people don't come in. It's not a huge city salary. People come in because they want to do the best for all the children in the area, all the children. We need to educate all the children. We don't just pick and choose, educate the children who are going to do well anyway, and just say to other children, you're not in this. Where do those children then go? on the streets or to somebody else's school, but you're not. That's the edge effect of reducing public voices and increasing private voices. And I don't think we should wish that for any school. Now, that's my big political point about it. How are these things borne out in practice when academics look at these things? So this report came out. This is the very latest report into academisation. This is by the Education Policy Institute. It is not a left-wing think tank. Its key person is David Laws, who was a Lib Dem minister, and he was a Minister of Education. The key researcher in this piece of research is a guy called John Andrews, who is a statistician for the DFE and has now gone to work for the EPI. And the conclusion that I want to draw to your attention, what they essentially say is they can't see any difference in results between academy schools and non-academy schools. But the recommendation that they're making in this, because they say there are many academy chains that are doing badly, so they say they want to allow high-performing local authorities, of which Greenwich is one, they want to allow high-performing local authorities to take over schools from underperforming academy chains. This is the very latest study, and it says academisation is no magic bullet, and they say that local authorities should be able to take over schools that are doing badly when they're academised. And I think that's important. The other bit of evidence that we've seen in just recent weeks from the London School of Economics, the lead author was Anne West. The big claim that the government tells you about academisation is it gives autonomy. They claim that autonomy works. This LSE study says they can't find any evidence of meaningful autonomy for teachers in multi-academy trusts. The reverse, that teachers have got less autonomy in multi-academy trust schools than in local authority schools. And in fact, the schools with the least autonomy in the whole of our education system are the multi-academy trusts. They are run by a central multi-academy trust body, or can be. Some of them are slightly more liberal. The multi-academy trust can, as I said, close down the individual school governing body. The school loses its entire legal existence when it joins a multi-academy trust. So John Rowan's legal existence for 341 years, if it becomes a school as part of the UST, which has been existed for 18 months, the John Rowan will lose its legal existence. It will no longer be an independent school. There will be no way that John Rowan parents or teachers can make decisions about John Rowan School. It disappears as a legal entity, and I say to you, that's not something that you want. So to come on to the situation the school faces, Ofsted. Ofsted come in and they tell you your school is doing badly. Well, do you believe Ofsted judgments? Should you believe Ofsted judgments in general? No. The National Audit Office has just conducted a study of Ofsted. And it's the first sort of national study of Ofsted that's happened for, well, I think ever, really. And one of their conclusions is that Ofsted do not know whether their actions help to improve schools. They have no metrics that tell you whether what they do helps to improve schools at all. Matthew Pennycook, your MP, who I don't know Matthew, I met him at the Anti-Cuts meeting a couple of years ago, but he has done some good things, I think, around this. And he's written a letter to Damien Hines. I'm sure he'd be quoting from it if he was here and not in Parliament. And he goes through the situation the school was in, John Rowan was in, when the Ofsted inspector came. That and I don't know the names, but when your long, well-respected head teacher, Des Malone, had left, a substantive head had come in who had been, frankly, a disaster. And that's what the meeting that we were at last time was about. She'd left. Then there'd been another head who was doing a bit better, but then left. So you're in that turmoil. And for Ofsted to come in during that turmoil, to point to that turmoil, and then say this school is failing, is just a ridiculous way to approach the matter. When you can look for ways, when the only consequence of doing that is to say it has to become an academy where there is absolutely no proof that that helps to improve things. I think there is one other thing that we all need to understand and think about Ofsted. They are such an arrogant body that if they do an inspection on your school and they say your school is inadequate, as they did with the John Rowan School, they allow no appeal against their judgment. Now stop and think about that. Ofsted are a publicly funded, public body. They think that they are always right under all circumstances, and therefore you can't appeal against them. Now, I tell you that schools have objected to that. And a particular school, Durand, went to court to say, this can't be right. It can't be right that you don't allow an appeal. And the High Court found in favour of that school and said Ofsted was wrong. The High Court said that Ofsted should have an appeal mechanism, and Ofsted has not obeyed that court judgment. There is no appeal mechanism. We've written to Ofsted about this recently. They say, well, we're appealing that judgment, so we're not going to introduce an appeal till we see if our appeal works. They are not we think they're not allowed to do that. The court has said they should put an appeal mechanism in place. They have not put an appeal mechanism in place. I think the John Rowan School should appeal against the Ofsted judgment. They should appeal that judgment. They should appeal that judgment. We know that Ofsted will say it's not allowed. But that raises a legal question, because the High Court says that Ofsted should allow an appeal. So the school should appeal. Then let Ofsted do what they want. I mean, I guess the solution would be they would have to re-inspect. If they don't have an appeal, then they'll have to come in again. I think the teachers in the school can work with that if we get a time scale, not if they come back next week, but if there's some time scale, then an appeal, then a fresh inspection could easily see John Rowan not being graded inadequate, and then it would not have to become an academy. And other schools that have been in this situation have done that. They've had inadequate gradings, so the DFE says you have to become an academy. They've been allowed to have further Ofsted inspections, have not been inadequate, and have not converted. So there's a lot to talk about, but that's roughly speaking what I think you should do. I also wanted to say, I think the teachers at the school, I am really pleased that the 97% vote for strike action. Nobody wants to disrupt your children's education, but I think those teachers, in taking strike action, and I'll be down at the next picket line I can get to, that those teachers taking that action are in fact fighting for a decent education for all of their children, so good luck to them.